There is a moment in life when something inside you shifts. Not loudly, not dramatically. Nothing explodes, nothing collapses in public. From the outside, everything looks the same. You still go to work. You answer messages. You laugh when appropriate. You attend birthdays, dinners, family gatherings. But somewhere inside you, something subtle has broken. It's difficult to explain because the change doesn't come from a single betrayal. It doesn't come from a dramatic conflict or some unforgettable humiliation. Instead, it arrives slowly, like a fog lifting from a landscape you've been looking at your entire life. And suddenly you begin to see details that were always there. Conversations that once felt natural start sounding strangely repetitive. Certain laughs feel slightly forced. Compliments begin to reveal a faint trace of calculation behind them. Even kindness starts to feel conditional. And the strange part is that no one else seems to notice, only you. For a long time, most people move through life carrying a quiet assumption that human relationships are fundamentally sincere. That when people smile, they usually mean it. That when someone asks how you are, they genuinely want to know. That friendship forms naturally, like gravity between souls. But time does something very specific to the human mind. It teaches pattern recognition. And once the mind begins to detect patterns, innocence starts dissolving. You notice the coworker who praises you publicly, but subtly undermines you when you're absent. You notice the friend who disappears during difficult moments but suddenly reappears when they need something. You notice entire conversations revolving around status, validation, and subtle competition. At first, these observations seem like isolated incidents, but eventually something uncomfortable becomes impossible to ignore. A large portion of human interaction runs less on affection and more on interest. And once that realization appears, it rarely disappears again. Philosophers have been observing this phenomenon for centuries. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that selfishness isn't a rare defect of human nature. It is its central engine. Each individual lives primarily within the limits of their own needs, fears, and ambitions. Sympathy, in many cases, is simply a refined form of self-preservation. Decades later, Emil Cioran pushed this insight further into darker territory. For him, understanding human nature deeply was almost guaranteed to produce disappointment. Not because people are monsters, but because they are rarely as noble as we prefer to imagine. Then comes José Ortega y Gasset, who added another disturbing layer to the diagnosis. In The Revolt of the Masses, he describes the emergence of a new psychological type, the mass man, a person who does not examine himself, someone who simply repeats collective opinions, inherited beliefs, and social impulses without ever questioning them. When these three perspectives converge, a difficult question appears. What if the problem is not that some people eventually disappoint you? What if the problem is that, for many years, you believed in an overly optimistic version of humanity? This is not a video about hating people, nor is it a call to isolate yourself from the world. What we are exploring is something more subtle and far more unsettling. The moment when intellectual maturity dissolves a social illusion most of us carried for decades. Because one day, quietly and almost without warning, something changes. You begin to see, and everything starts with a dangerous ability: observation. It rarely begins with a tragedy. More often, it begins with a small moment of silence. You are sitting at a dinner table with family or friends. Someone shares good news, a promotion, a personal achievement, something meaningful. For a brief moment, everyone listens. Then something subtle happens. A joke appears that slightly diminishes the achievement. Someone interrupts to talk about their own story. Another person changes the subject entirely. No one seems hostile, No one openly criticizes. But the atmosphere changes in a way that's difficult to describe. And if you are paying attention, you notice something strange. The conversation was never really about listening. It was about positioning. Moments like this appear everywhere once you begin observing carefully. Work meetings, friendships, casual conversations in cafes. You start realizing that many interactions are not exchanges of understanding. They are silent negotiations for recognition, attention, and status. Arthur Schopenhauer saw this dynamic with unsettling clarity. One of his most devastating observations appears simple at first. Every person takes the limits of their own field of vision as the limits of the world. The implications are profound. Each individual lives inside their own perspective, shaped by personal interests, fears, and desires. People rarely perceive reality objectively. They interpret reality in ways that protect their own position within it. Modern psychology confirms this through what researchers call the egocentric bias. Study after study shows that individuals consistently overestimate their own fairness, generosity, and contribution to group efforts. In collaborative tasks, most participants believe they did more work than everyone else. In moral evaluations, people rate themselves as more ethical than average. Statistically, of course, that is impossible. But psychologically, it feels true. Because the human mind is not designed primarily to discover truth. It is designed to defend identity. And identity is fragile. This explains 1,000 small behaviors that once seemed confusing. The friend who only calls when they need help. The colleague who compliments you publicly, but quietly criticizes you when your success threatens theirs. The person who asks about your life but only waits for a pause long enough to talk about themselves. Most of the time, none of this is consciously malicious. People genuinely believe they are good friends, good colleagues, good human beings. Schopenhauer understood this contradiction perfectly. The majority of selfish actions are not performed by villains. They are performed by ordinary individuals who simply cannot see beyond themselves. For years, these patterns remain invisible because society runs on a shared illusion. The illusion that people are more attentive, more empathetic, and more self-aware than they truly are. This illusion makes social life smoother. But once observation begins, the illusion weakens, patterns repeat, inconsistencies multiply, and a difficult realization slowly settles in. The problem isn't that some people are selfish. The problem is how universal the pattern is. Once that understanding arrives, something shifts inside you, not hatred, but distance. Look closely at any crowded conversation, not what people say, but how they say it. Notice how often opinions appear already formed, complete, certain, delivered with confidence that suggests deep reflection. Yet if you trace those ideas carefully, they rarely belong to the person speaking. They are borrowed, echoed, repeated from somewhere else. Long before social media existed, José Ortega y Gasset noticed a new psychological phenomenon emerging in modern societies. He called it the mass man. This concept had nothing to do with wealth or social class. The mass man could be rich or poor, educated or uneducated. The defining feature was internal, a lack of self-demand. As Ortega wrote, the mass man is the man who demands nothing of himself. This single sentence reveals something disturbing. Many people live their entire lives without examining their own thinking. Opinions are adopted from friends, family, media, or social groups. Convictions are inherited. Reactions replace reflection. And perhaps the most dangerous element is that this behavior feels normal. Today we can observe this phenomenon with brutal clarity. Digital sociology has documented how emotions like outrage spread significantly faster online than calm analysis. Anger travels quickly. Nuance moves slowly. A controversial claim appears. Within minutes, thousands react. Few investigate. fewer still reconsider. Reputation collapses before context arrives. Ortega predicted this dynamic decades earlier when he warned that the mass man does not seek truth. He seeks affirmation. He wants to feel that his instinctive reaction is correct. Because belonging to a collective opinion provides psychological comfort. To think independently is harder. It demands doubt. It requires solitude. It risks disagreement. And most people instinctively avoid those things. Once you see this clearly, conversations start to feel different. Many discussions stop resembling dialogue. They resemble performance. People defend identities. They repeat narratives. They protect their place inside a social tribe. Real conversation becomes rare, because real conversation requires two uncommon qualities: attention and independent thought. When someone begins noticing this everywhere, a deeper feeling emerges. Not anger, not resentment, something quieter: disenchantment. Disappointment is usually emotional. Lucidity is something else entirely. Disappointment still hopes things might improve. Lucidity understands the structure of the problem, and when someone studies human nature long enough, disappointment often evolves into something colder. Clarity. The Romanian philosopher Emil Cioran pushed this clarity to uncomfortable extremes. In A Short History of Decay, he wrote a line that many readers initially reject: "To know men is already to despise them." At first glance, it sounds like theatrical misanthropy. But Cioran was not speaking about hatred. He was describing the psychological consequence of prolonged observation. The longer one studies human behavior, the more visible certain patterns become. Principles that collapse under pressure, friendships that last only while they are convenient, moral values that disappear when personal cost becomes too high. History offers endless confirmation. Wars justified by noble rhetoric, but driven by pride, power, and resources. Political systems corrupted by individuals who once claimed integrity. Economic structures that reward manipulation more often than honesty. None of this requires monstrous individuals. It requires ordinary human psychology operating at scale. Evolutionary biology explains why this happens. Human beings evolved in environments where cooperation was essential for survival. But competition for resources, mates, and status was equally necessary. As a result, human nature developed two parallel instincts: cooperate, compete, help others, outmaneuver them when necessary. These forces coexist inside the same mind. Cioran understood the psychological weight of this duality. Once someone recognizes it deeply, automatic trust disappears. The mind becomes more cautious, more observant, less emotionally invested in social illusions. This is not cruelty, it is adaptation. But it raises a difficult question. If human nature contains these contradictions, how can one continue living among others without becoming entirely cynical? This is where an older philosophical insight becomes useful. Distance. One of the quietest signs of maturity is something most people never talk about. Your social circle shrinks, not out of loneliness, out of clarity. When people are young, social life is expansive. Large groups, constant gatherings, dozens of acquaintances, endless conversation. Over time, something changes, the circle contracts, and strangely, life often becomes calmer as it does. Arthur Schopenhauer recognized this pattern long ago. He once wrote, "Solitude is the fate of all exceptional minds." This statement is often misunderstood. He was not suggesting that intelligent people must live as hermits. What he meant is subtler. As awareness grows, excessive social interaction becomes mentally exhausting. Not because people are unbearable, but because most interaction is shallow, full of small competitions, hidden expectations, unspoken hierarchies. To protect clarity of thought, the mind begins to select its environment more carefully. Certain conversations feel unnecessary. Certain gatherings feel draining, not offensive, just empty. So the individual begins choosing fewer interactions, but deeper ones. Interestingly, modern psychology supports this observation. Long-term studies on well-being consistently show that emotional stability does not correlate with the number of social connections. Instead, it correlates with the depth of a small number of meaningful relationships. A handful of authentic connections often produces greater life satisfaction than hundreds of superficial ones. Schopenhauer understood this intuitively. True wisdom in social life, he suggested, begins when we reduce our illusions about others, when expectations become realistic, when we stop demanding emotional depth from people who are not capable of offering it. At that moment, something interesting happens. You stop being constantly disappointed, because disappointment requires expectation, and expectation has quietly disappeared. There is an unexpected consequence when illusions dissolve. Life does not necessarily become darker. In many cases, it becomes clearer. For years, many people carry an unconscious expectation that others should be consistently loyal, thoughtful, and morally admirable. When reality fails to match this expectation, frustration grows. But once that expectation disappears, a strange kind of freedom appears. People become easier to understand, because you no longer expect extraordinary depth from ordinary psychology. Schopenhauer hinted at this freedom when he argued that wisdom often consists in reducing our expectations of human nature. Ortega y Gasset reminded us that most individuals simply follow inherited ideas and social currents. Cioran went further and suggested that disillusionment may be a necessary stage of intellectual maturity. Certain illusions must die so that a more sober perception of reality can emerge. And when that happens, something curious becomes visible. Amid thousands of ordinary interactions, rare moments appear. Someone helps without seeking recognition. A friend remains loyal even when there is no advantage. A person speaks honestly even when dishonesty would be easier. These moments are uncommon, statistically rare. But precisely because they are rare, they carry enormous weight. Social psychology confirms something philosophers long suspected. Deep, authentic relationships are not common, but they have disproportionate impact on human well-being. Perhaps that rarity is what gives them value. Maturity does not destroy our view of humanity. It reorganizes it. Most people are ordinary. Some will inevitably disappoint. A few will surprise you with integrity, and those few become priceless. In the end, the problem was never liking people. The problem was believing that everyone deserved the same place in your life. There comes a moment in life when the noise fades and you begin to see people as they really are. Not the masks, not the roles, not the polite performances. Just the fragile, conflicted human nature beneath it all. That moment can feel lonely, but it can also be the beginning of clarity. If this video spoke to something real inside you, know that simply being here already matters more than you might think. Watching, reflecting, sharing these ideas with someone else, that alone already helps this channel continue. But if you feel this content deserves to go further, there are two powerful ways to support it. Becoming a member helps keep these philosophical explorations alive and allows the channel to grow with deeper, more thoughtful content. And if a video truly resonated with you, using super thanks is a direct way to show that this kind of reflection has value. Of course, support should never feel like an obligation. Your presence here is already meaningful. But if these ideas have ever made you pause, think deeper, or see the world differently, then maybe this is your way of keeping that space alive for others too. And sometimes, the smallest gesture is enough to keep a quiet idea from disappearing.